Hello, and welcome to the Never Ending Experiment. This is Kim Anderson, and this is episode 17 already. And today I want to talk about conspiracy theories, misinformation, and fake news. Now, I just wanted to thank everyone who came to my book launch, and I also want to thank the people that didn't get in. Unfortunately, my effort at my first Zoom meeting for my book launch was not perfect. I did have some technical glitches. I was a little worried about that. So I want to thank everyone who showed up and also apologize to those people that couldn't get in to the book launch. So because I didn't get a recording from my book launch, I am going to just redo that sometime next week. So I will have a little blurb about my book in more detail, and I'm going to be posting that directly to YouTube. But today I want to talk about conspiracy theories and misinformation, fake news. They're all kind of similar things. I am not going to go into detail about specific conspiracies. Instead, I want to kind of take a broad view, which is what I like to do, and look at some other sort of more serious things and also the downside of getting too caught up in any version of the truth. And I think it's fairly similar to what my opinions are about religion, which is that there are a lot of things that really can't be known. And so to have confidence in something that can't be known is kind of a dangerous game to play. Now, my opinion on conspiracy theories in general is that, yes, there are definitely conspiracies going on, but there are all kinds of conspiracies going on, and a lot of them, if not most of them, are totally open. Right now, I'm dealing with a couple of big conspiracies that are quite challenging. One of them is the conspiracy to shut down overpopulation debate. The other is the conspiracy to shut down discussion on matriarchy and pre-patriarchal past, and even current-day matriarchal and matrilineal societies. So there is effort by certain groups being put in to shut down intellectual conversations and intelligent debate and discussion about a number of subjects. So what I have to say about that is that I am more worried about the open conspiracies that are not being hidden, that are not secret, but a lot of people aren't seeing that they are conspiracies. Instead, they peddle a certain narrative to go against the thing that they're fighting against. And a lot of time is just dismissal or to say that it's been debunked. A lot of people like to say that overpopulation was debunked and that it's only about racism, which is a very weird thing to say since overpopulation is all about science and numbers. And if you look at the people talking about overpopulation, they're almost all scientists, and they're people that are very actively involved in analyzing both society and our history and the evidence and ecology. So there's a lot of really, really important voices. I mean, some of the most important intellectuals in the environmental movement do talk about overpopulation. But we've entered into an age where they are being shut down, and I believe they are being shut down for economic purposes, which is one of the major reasons why a lot of discussions are shut down. Now, the conspiracy against matriarchy, I think, is a little more malevolent, and it just does, I think, have to do with the attachment to patriarchal cultures specifically and a type of male dominance. Because I think what's happened, because we've had patriarchy around for so long, a lot of men really do believe that they are superior. And a lot of women believe it too. It kind of has surprised me when I've looked into this a little bit more, how many women genuinely believe that they are inferior to men. I certainly don't feel that way, and I think there is no evidence to show that that's the case. But I think a lot of those men that are attached to their culture and attached to the idea that they are superior just really don't want to admit that women might be on equal grounds with them, because that would upset their ego and their notion of who they are. So that one is a little more contentious. I don't necessarily think that it's about economic in that situation, although I do think patriarchy is very focused on growth and economic growth and colonial growth. So beyond the borders of wherever they are, they tend to want to creep into other areas and invade. Invasion is the core of how patriarchy has spread. Now, I don't want to get into details about those particular issues. I just wanted to mention them because they are conspiracies that have affected me. So there are people that have tried to shut me down because of those issues, because of those opinions. And I think what's happening now with the internet in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been just a major, major shift. And again, I'm not an expert on this particularly, but I've definitely felt the brunt of it, which is a lot of social media channels are really being sabotaged and shut down. There's been a number of people on Instagram that I know that have been hacked, and people aren't recovering from these attacks. They are just starting to pull away more and more from being online. They're pulling away more and more from social media. So the people at the top that are kind of using us peons as pawns in their game part of it is the malevolent dictatorship. I mean, the fact that Elon Musk is such a big player in the American government right now, and he's not even American. He is a globalist, imperialist, technophile. In the technophilia era right now, I think that the techno era and the digital era that we're in should give us pause to get too confident in any version of what's really going on. Because there are a lot of people that want to know what's really going on with the governments, what's really going on with these people and that people. But a lot of the times what they're doing is they're finding actual conspiracies, but they're relating different conspiracies together as though it's all one big conspiracy. And I disagree with that. I think that the fact that conspiracies are so open and so common, and just to give an example, like imagine you're at an office, you work at an office, there's somebody in the office that a lot of people don't like for whatever reason, and someone's organizing a party, and they invite everyone in the office except for that person. So they create a conspiracy so that nobody tells that person that there's a party going on. That's an everyday kind of conspiracy. That happens in playgrounds and schoolyards. That happens all the time. But we don't think of that in the sort of grandiose way that we think of the conspiracies happening at a multinational or a governmental level. Now, some of the conspiracies I outright think are ridiculous. I don't believe in lizard people. I don't think that that's a real thing. We all have lizard ancestry, so we have parts of our brain in our bodies that are connected to being lizards and reptiles, but that doesn't mean that we can take off our human suits and become lizards at the end of the day. I think that that's kind of hilarious, and that's kind of just a weird thing that has taken hold, but I definitely don't believe in that. Now, the fact is, there are secret societies. There's lots and lots of secret societies, and that's been going on for ages. The Masons are one of the most commonly known secret societies. Secret, not so secret. The fact that we know about them means that they're not that secret. A lot of religions or mystical traditions have secret societies as well. Within the Roman Catholic Church, Dan Brown is very well known for trying to investigate that. And I'm sure there's a lot of creativity that gets put into turning that into works of fiction because, again, if it's secret, how can anyone really know? If there's so many people trying so hard to keep people from knowing, nobody's really going to know. But the fact is that if they continue their secret society, people will start to tell and they will start to leak information. So it's kind of both. It's like, yeah, okay, the conspiracies are there, they're happening, there are secret societies, but how can you as an outsider really know? And it would take some pretty high level investigation to really figure that kind of stuff out. So if you're in that field, that's very interesting. And there are people that spend their lives trying to figure those conspiracies out and trying to figure those secret societies out by actually investigating and talking to people and figure it out. But the fact is that we can all lie, everybody can lie, and so there's bound to be these layers of misinformation. Now, the misinformation is something that has been studied a bit, and what they found was that actually online, misinformation travels faster than real information. And that is a scary thing to think about. And I think the reason behind that is that when people make up a story, they're making up the story precisely because it grabs your attention. They're trying to grab your attention. They're trying to get you to see the story and be alarmed. And that happens in fiction as well. I think John Mulaney joked about quicksand and how when you grow up, you really think quicksand is going to be a much bigger deal than it is. because so many stories that you tell children involve quicksand. I even remember when I was a child in the schoolyard, and there was a girl who tried to convince us all that in fact another child had been in this mud because there was a boot in the mud. And she said there was a girl that went in there and she got swallowed up because that was quicksand. And so to stay away from that patch of dirt. And it was just regular mud, and I'm sure she just got her boot stuck in. But we were all in shock and fear that what if this is true, that this is a patch of quicksand and it swallowed up a child already. And so we had to be really careful of it because we read all these stories that say that quicksand is real. So she created a conspiracy right there. So that's the kind of thing that happens a lot. There are compulsive liars out there. I know people, I've hung out with people that are compulsive liars, and they make up stories all the time. And they make up relationships with people, they make up all kinds of stories about their background. And it's frustrating because I think it makes social trust much more difficult. And I think that we are really in an era where we really can't trust each other. Nobody can. I've had people in my life not tell me about really important things sometimes, and I've just been like, well, why didn't you tell me? So it isn't really paranoid to think that there are conspiracy theories. I think what's wrong about it, like I said, is when you believe that it's all one conspiracy and that it's all like the elite. And I'm so sick of hearing about the elite because you can be elite at a lot of different things. If you're an elite athlete, that just means that you're really good at sports. That doesn't make you a bad person. It's supposed to make you a good person. If you're an elite because you're rich, then that's not really elite either. That's a different kind of thing. Like maybe you live a so-called elite lifestyle. But a lot of the people that develop these theories and think that the intellectuals are also the elite. So they conflate having a lot of money with having a lot of intelligence. And that's not the case at all. If anything, I think that that's contradictory because greed doesn't make you smart. Greed, in fact, is not a very smart thing at all. What it does, it just creates huge imbalances in the population, and it creates hardship for people at the bottom. And it's a really bad idea because also the more wealth that you acquire, the more responsibility you have over all the things now that you've bought, and you have to hire people and then trust them. And of course, they're not going to trust them. A lot of people work for rich people and then tell on them because they don't want to be under them. They don't want to be a peon for their empire or whatever it is. So the misinformation is definitely something that I think has gotten much worse. One of the biggest areas of misinformation, besides what I mentioned before, is politics. And I would say that I am centrist. I don't really have any political party right now that I can say that I completely agree with. I have a lot of problems with pretty much all of them, and I think that especially on the left, and in Canada right now, we basically have 3 different parties on the left and maybe 2 or 3 on the right. And then the Liberal kind of present themselves as centrist, maybe a little bit to the left. But I think that those terms don't really mean much anymore. And I think the biggest thing that's happened is that centrists are getting labeled as the opposite by the people on the extremes. And so centrism is being attacked on both sides because they want to label anybody that doesn't follow their particular platform and their particular specific beliefs as the other side. And I'm seeing this happen more, I would say, in the left, although it's always happened in the right. The biggest difference between the right and the left right now is the right is so focused on staying the same that they haven't really changed that much. They're as bad as they always were, and have always been bad. But the left wing has changed the most because they embrace change more. But a lot of those changes have been really negative, and a lot of those changes have actually been to embrace a lot of right-wing ideas. So the left wing, I think, has actually become more right-wing in how they do things, which is through duplicity, because a lot of right-wing people, I mean, you think about who's been shot in the United States, it was mostly left-wing people that were assassinated for various reasons. And it's been much rarer for anybody in the right wing. I think Trump was probably the first person on the so-called right who at least somebody attempted to kill him. So that shows you the level of evil that the right wing is capable of, that they have been doing that for a long time. And they've been using a lot of duplicitous means to trick people. And I think that that's what the people on the left don't understand, is that the right wing has basically already infiltrated them ages ago and screwed up their whole platform to make it more friendly to manipulation and to money interests and to protecting other right-wing groups. Like, this is something too that I think the left wing doesn't understand. When you get into discussions about immigration and other cultures, everybody wants to position it as though European descended people are the most racist and the most sexist. And they're not. Like, if you look at the evidence, it's actually the opposite. I think probably the least sexist cultures traditionally are Native American cultures, which of course have heavily influenced the European settlers that came here in ways that I think are very poorly talked about. And that's something that I hope to cover in a future podcast. So our whole sense of right wing and left wing are very messed up. The left wing is promoting right wing ideologies all the time because they're trying to be so inclusive that they don't know who to include or exclude. So how does that relate to conspiracies? So the biggest piece of misinformation that I was mentioning is to call centrist and rational and analytical opinions far right. I'm seeing that more and more and more and more lately. So the left wing is being played really, really hard by right-wing forces beyond their understanding because they have decided to label everyone who isn't white as part of their left-wing group. And that's absurd. I mean, saying that what Trump is doing right now is colonial is a bit weird because he's also pulling away from a lot of the colonial actions of the United States from the past, which makes me think that he's not really intending to take over for the United States, that he is intending perhaps to take over for another larger group of countries. And what that tells me is that they are purposefully, again, misinforming the public about what their intentions are. Trump has said before that he sees Republicans as stupid and easily fooled. So his intentions are probably not to make America great again at all. If anything, he's taken away all of those things that might have been used to say that America is great, which is striving for excellence and high-level research, which he's shutting down. So where is the greatness? Well, maybe the greatness is not within America at all. So again, a lot of people are believing the misinformation, and I think every single politician, every political party, every police force, every government has ties to conspiracies of some kind. You know, another big conspiracy happening right now, of course, is the tech world. But these are forces in our society that have honestly been going on for thousands of years. So the malevolent forces of gangster type patriarchal violence and invasions has been going on for ages. But it's definitely taking on a new level of confusion. You know, in the past, maybe nationalism would have been the number one thing that people could get behind. But I think when you have so many conspiracy theories and such a lack of trust, and people don't trust the government at all, then it can lead them to believe that everything that they're hearing is a lie. Now, I know I just kind of said something similar, that Trump is probably lying, but the fact is that you just don't know. His actions are inconsistent. They're not consistent with one way of imperialism. He's pulling back on some of the imperial ideas and pushing forward on some of the other imperial ideas. Now, part of the reason why that could be happening, say if you start divesting in something, it's kind of like when a person is very afraid and they shit themselves, right? Why do you do that? When you're afraid, you go into a panic mode and your body says, we have to act quickly. And so we have to shut down all the activities that are happening that aren't immediately necessary. And digestion is one of those first things that gets shut down. And that's why people get massive indigestion and stomach aches and so on when they're really afraid, because their body says, hey, we might have to fight, we might have to flee. So stop doing anything that you don't need to be done right now. And I think that's kind of what the United States is doing, is going into the panic mode of we're going to have to fight. And so just get rid of everything that we don't absolutely need, which is a frightening proposition. Now, as a Canadian with Loyalist ancestry, I have Quebec ancestry, I have massive respect for First Nations and Native American culture. I am more sad than anything. I don't really feel afraid. I think I feel more afraid personally because of these conspiracies going on that are kind of irrational. You know, when hackers start to hack people, it isn't necessarily with a specific intention. We don't know why they're attacking certain people. The people that I know that have been hacked on Instagram don't have anything in common with each other. Clearly, I don't think it's political. They don't post a lot of political content. So I think that's the scariest part, is that when you're being attacked and you don't know who's attacking you, it's like a cat fight, you know, when they just get really angry. And if you try to intervene in a cat fight, you'll probably get attacked. Even though you didn't start the fight, it doesn't matter, because when cats get worked up, they get angry and they fight anything that comes anywhere near them. And that's kind of the case with humans, and that's what I'm sort of worried about is going to happen. We have all these conspiracy theories. We don't know for sure who's working for who, or what's going on. We know that there's backroom deals going on. We know that people are going missing, that people are dying, and we're being told stories in the media that don't really make sense. For those of us who are in a situation and then you read about it in the news, sometimes you think, wow, that wasn't what happened, or that was misconstrued. I remember a story ages ago that was about the Millennial Skate Park in Calgary, and they were saying that there was a homophobic attack because there was all this spray painting and it was mostly against the police, but one of them said, you know, the F word, not that one, the other F word. But they were using that in terms of like attacking the police, so it wasn't really actually directed at gay people at all. It was directed at the police, but because the police are the ones who get to report the story, of course they took all that context out and they presented it as a very different kind of attack, that this vandalism had something to do with gay people when actually it had to do with the police. So that's one example, and there's so many examples like that. All you have to do is say someone is racist. They don't say what they did that was racist. They don't explain anything. And if you want to have an example of that, just look up what happened with Roseanne Barr, is that she was labeled as a racist because of a very strange tweet that she made that connected one of the politicians in the United States with the Muslim Brotherhood and with Planet of the Apes. Now, I read the tweet. I didn't really understand it. Like kind of a joke in her head. And she said too that she was on, I think, on Adderall. But everybody ganged up on her and everybody said that she was racist and that the tweet was racist. And they didn't repeat the tweet. And it's not because the tweet was so offensive that it couldn't be read. There was no N-word in there. It's because it was confusing. And if more people knew what that tweet was, they would just be confused. But they didn't report that. It's actually very, very difficult. Just try looking it up and see if you can find the actual tweet. Because most of those articles that reported on it just said that it was racist. They kept repeating that it was racist. Everybody said it was racist. And yet, if you look at Roseanne's past and you look at her show, you find there's a number of times where she spoke out against racism. So the accusation of racism, the accusation of being right, especially far right wing, really, really, really needs to be taken with a grain of salt. If you read that in an article and they don't give you a quote of what they meant, and they're not referencing very specific things that that person did, then what they're doing is misinterpreting and misinforming, and they're trying to shut down a different conversation that's going on. So that's the thing about conspiracies. Now, it's funny because Roseanne herself is into a lot of conspiracies, and I don't necessarily agree with a lot of her opinions either. You know, she gets into a lot of weird stuff too. And when you start to dig into weird stuff, you start to see all kinds of connections. And that's another point that I want to make about conspiracy theories, is it has to do with coincidences. Now, there are a lot of coincidences that happen in our lives. I know I've had a lot of coincidences totally outside of my control. A lot of times those are things that kind of guide you in one direction or another. But what it looks like from the outside is that these coincidences are happening, and people think that it's people that are controlling those coincidences. And it's not. It can be, sometimes it's not. So our interpretation of whether or not that's just a coincidence that happened to happen that way, or whether that wasn't something that intentionally happened that way, is really up to us. So that is an area of suspension of disbelief. And that's what I think we have to do. We all have to suspend our disbelief. And you kind of have to listen to your intuition to keep yourself safe, but to believe wholeheartedly that there's a mass conspiracy of one group of people, the bad guys, who are conspiring against and oppressing another group of people, the good guys, which you usually call the people. The powerful people are never people, apparently. I just reject that notion completely. And I think that within those groups that we've divided, there probably are some people that might line up with that idea. There are powerful people that are conspiring to change society so that they can have more control. Absolutely, that's happening. But those are separate groups of people, and they're not all working with each other. I think a lot of them are working against each other. And that's what I've seen so much, because as someone who's talked about overpopulation, I have had to get flack from the right and flack from the left. And both sides think it's a conspiracy of the other side that's allowing the overpopulation debate to grow. Left-wing people genuinely believe that overpopulation activists are all racist, right-wing xenophobes. Right-wing people genuinely believe that all of the overpopulation activists are left-wing, liberal, hippies, and eco-fascists. That's the other big one that now is called eco-fascism, which is a contradiction in terms completely. Now, you can be an eco-terrorist, but you can't be an eco-fascist. Because ecology is about everything working in balance together, and fascism doesn't do that. Fascism is about one group of people dominating everybody else. So it's incompatible. You can't be an eco-fascist. It doesn't exist. So that's an example of conspiracies, misinformation, fake news. The fake news thing is huge, and I think the fact is the internet has made fake news so much easier to spread. The fact that now AI is writing a lot for people, and certain people are allowing AI to completely take over their information systems. There are books being sold to libraries now that are completely written by AI. And a lot of times, because AI seems so normal, it sounds so normal, sometimes you have to read quite a bit before you even start to realize, hey, this is wrong. This isn't even real information. Because the AI can't tell what's right and what's wrong. And most journalists also can't tell what's right and what's wrong. It takes a lot of investigation and a lot of personal experience. Because again, anybody can lie to you, including the people that you think are on your side. You know, another concept to look at is taqiyya in Islam, which is that people are allowed in Islam to lie about Islam in order to protect Islam. So that means a lot of the information that we're getting from Islamic sources and from Muslim sources is purposefully wrong. And they know they're lying, but because they have this within their ethics that they're allowed to lie, that they can do that. And that's the same thing on the right wing. So Christians also do that a lot. And that's something that I observed for decades ago in the right wing, is how much they lie. And I mean, look, example of the secret society I'm talking about, the Ku Klux Klan. As soon as slavery was abolished and that they were no longer publicly acceptable to be racist, they just went underground and created a secret society. So secret societies are everywhere. A lot of people want to have exclusive groups. The internet has made it really, really hard. So that's the difficult part about the internet. In some ways, it has made information more accessible, but at the same time, it has also made misinformation more accessible. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they do their research, they just go online and they copy paste information and they don't look any deeper than that to see where the source of it really is. Because sometimes it really is just like an urban myth. Sometimes it's just some teenager that thought of it. You know, one of these compulsive liars that just made up something and then it spread everywhere and then suddenly everybody believes it. A lot of things that we think are facts are really not facts, but they're just either misinterpretations or sometimes they really are outright lies. So I think that kind of unpacks sort of how I see it, which is for those people that are really caught up in these conspiracy theories is, where do you get your confidence that you think you're right? Like, where do you get that? I don't understand it. I don't get that either for for religious people. I think faith in anything is dangerous because in order to find out the truth, you need doubt. You need doubt and you need to be completely open to what the truth is to find it. And if you already think you know what the truth is, then you will block yourself from ever finding it. And for an individual person who doesn't have millions of dollars to spend on secret recordings or the technology in order to listen in on people, the kind of things that, the police or the army might have. If you don't have that, I don't see how you as an individual can ever find those things. So it's not that you should just give up and not even try to understand what kind of conspiracies are happening. I think you just have to take it with a grain of salt and understand that you're not smart enough, you're not powerful enough to know everything and to have a full understanding of all the different political ideas that are going on. Because when you really break it down, every single individual has their own beliefs, their own experiences, their own perspectives. And there is no group that can ever erase that. Even though they try, a lot of religions try to just make everybody the same. They want to make us like ants and bees where we're all little clones of each other following the leader. But I don't want that for human beings because that's dumber and that's less intelligent, it's less complex. What I think we need is we do need a diversity of opinions. We do need a diversity of people that do disagree with each other and are allowed to do that. But we do it in a way where we can sort of say, hey, you know what? This isn't my area of expertise, so I'm going to let that go. And just listen and see, and to stop blaming only a small group of people for something that is clearly influencing everyone. If we just got rid of all the rich billionaires today, there would be a brand new crop of people that rise to the top that would take over that position and do the exact same thing, which is scary. But it happens and it's true and you watch it. I don't know if I've ever seen any politician who does exactly what they said they were going to do during their campaign when they get into power. They all seem to magically change their minds. Why is that? So you may not think that you would join that big conspiracy at the top if you had that power, but maybe you would. If it means that you have a lot of fun and easy lifestyle and all the things that you want, a lot of people might sacrifice what they thought they would do in exchange for that. And that's a test that most of us won't even have to go through. Most of the poor people that get pitied and are thought to be completely not responsible for any of the bad things going on, those people will never have to be tested. They might just live their lives never being tested to see if they in fact would become corrupt if they had the opportunity. And we can't assume any of those things. Maybe open up your mind a bit about what's really going on, is that you'll never really know what's going on. People have busy lives. They do a million things in a day. They talk to thousands of people. You can't keep track of all that and pretend that it's all one group of people. Most of those conspiracies are open. The Technophilia conspiracy is open. The overpopulation denial conspiracy is open. Religious conspiracies are open. If you want to know more about specific religion, you can read the religious texts. They're all open to the public. But a lot of people will get caught up in it if they try to look for it, and then they lose track of what they thought they knew, which is easy because we all have these creative minds that invent all kinds of elaborate scenarios in our heads, and we have all this creative work and all of these fiction stories that encourage that creative thinking to believe in things that maybe aren't as common as we thought, like amnesia. We all have a little bit of forgetfulness. But if I believed everything I saw in Days of Our Lives when I was growing up on the soap operas, I think people have amnesia all the time. They all apparently die and then come back to life. They all get their memory wiped out and become new people. That doesn't happen that often. It does, but not as often as you think, because it's just fodder for creative narrative that gets us caught up in it, and we find it very interesting. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed my podcast, and I'm going to be working on doing another sort of book talk next week, and I'm going to be posting that because I want people who are interested in the book to maybe know a little bit more about it, because it's a complicated subject. So thank you for your time, and I'll be back in a couple weeks. This is Kim Anderson.